Good afternoon. I'm Jim Duff, the Executive Director of the Supreme Court Historical Society, and it's a great privilege for me to welcome you to today's discussion for Law Day. Our topic is the importance of civics education in the preservation of the rule of law and the independence of the judicial branch. We're very fortunate to have four outstanding leaders in civics education initiatives in the judicial branch with us today. Two of them are federal judges with stellar careers both on and off the bench within the judicial branch's executive management, Judges Rodney Sipple and Curtis Collier. And two are dynamic and experienced teachers who have joined our ranks for these important initiatives, Teresa Lukey and Nicole Maffey. When I was the director of the administrative office of the U.S. courts, we began to look at ways we could utilize unused spaces in courthouses for public purpose and programs. We began developing learning centers and designating spaces that could be used for programs. We had a great model to follow from St. Louis, which we'll hear more about today. When I joined the Historical Society, we began working on programs to provide to the courts and their learning centers, and we will also discuss those initiatives today. I would first like to introduce Judge Rodney Sipple. He is the United States District Judge for the Eastern and Western District of Missouri. He was confirmed as a district judge by the United States Senate in November 1997. We're proud to say he became a member of the Supreme Court Historical Society in 1991. He assumed senior status in 2023, and in 2009, Judge Sipple was chosen by the district and circuit judges of the Eighth Circuit to serve on the Judicial Conference of the United States, the official policymaking body of the United States judiciary. Upon his selection to the conference, Chief Justice John Roberts appointed Judge Sipple to the Judicial Conference's Executive Committee. Judge Sipple has been an outstanding leader within the judiciary throughout his career. Next, I would like to introduce Judge Curtis Collier. He is a United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Tennessee, residing in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was appointed to the court in 1995 and assumed senior status in 2014. Judge Collier is the first African-American to serve as a federal judge in the Eastern District of Tennessee and the second African-American federal judge to serve in the state of Tennessee. On October 7, 2005, Judge Collier became Chief Judge of the District Court and completed his 7-year term in 2012. Judge Collier is a recipient of numerous awards for leadership, community involvement, and legal accomplishments, including receiving the 2015 American Inns of Court Professionalism Award. We became good friends during his service on the board of the Federal Judicial Center. He is a leader both within the judiciary and his community in Chattanooga. We are also joined by Teresa Lukey. She has been an education program coordinator for the Eighth Circuit since April 2024. In addition to developing materials and activities to support civics education, she coordinates tours and programming for students and teachers in the St. Louis area. Teresa graduated from American University, Washington College of Law, earning a JD and MS in Justice, Law, and Society. She worked in the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau and Children's Legal Services of Baltimore. In 2011, she and her family returned to St. Louis, where she taught preschool and grades 3 through 5 for 10 years before going into school administration. She's thrilled to be able to combine her legal training and background with her practical knowledge of education in her current position. And finally, Nicole Maffey joined us at the Historical Society in 2022. She serves as our first director of civics education. She's done a phenomenal job at organizing and launching our Supreme Court in My Hometown program nationwide. We have received interest in these programs from every judicial circuit in the country. Nicole came to the society from the Baltimore County Public Schools, where she served as a secondary education resource teacher and then a social studies teacher and curriculum writer. She has a Master's of Arts in Teaching from Towson University and a BA in Political Science from Auburn University.
Just simple, we worked together for many years. It's been a great joy and privilege for me to get to know you over these years and become such a good friend and to get to know your family. What led to your establishment of the Learning Center and your beautiful new courthouse in St. Louis?
Well, we moved into the courthouse 25 years ago, so the planning took place during the 1990s. Our point person was Judge Ed Philippine. When he was talking to leaders in the community about the courthouse, which is part of the skyline in St. Louis, he felt strongly that we needed a learning center to explain the role of the federal courts and how we function. So he dedicated part of his time to planning the learning center as we developed the new courthouse. He had a lot of administrative and bureaucratic roadblocks and was increasingly frustrated until Justice Sandra Day O'Connor called him one day. She was always interested in civics and was curious about what he was up to with this learning center idea. And they had a conversation, and he reports after that, his roadblocks seemed to disappear. And so in the early 2000s, the idea took off. Judge Catherine Perry of our court kind of picked up the laboring oar. And when you, Jim Duff, became director, the planning and construction seemed to take off in 2006. And in 2009, Justice O'Connor returned to St. Louis to help dedicate the opening of this learning center.
Well, it was groundbreaking, and you were the first in the country to do so. As I mentioned at the outset, we've used it as a model for other learning centers. I think the next one that was established was done so in Justice Kennedy's name in Sacramento, California, and now we're spreading all around the country, and utilizing spaces in our courthouses that was underutilized and are now being put to good use for increasing public knowledge about the judiciary. And we're very grateful for your initiatives and your hard work in that, Rod. And it's been a model for the rest of us. Did you anticipate that when you were establishing the center, that it could be used as a model for others around the country?
And when we saw a need here, and obviously we collaborate with other districts on ideas about civic education, it seemed an obvious first step, but you never know where it'll go. Obviously, we created the idea here, and others have continued to improve on it. There's no doubt we hoped it would take off from there.
Well, great. It's been great, and we're grateful for your leadership in that regard. You've also played a great role in civic education outreach as chair of the Judicial Branch Committee of the Judicial Conference of the United States. And could you talk a little bit about that work and those initiatives and how you have worked with other judges in promoting this outreach?
The Judicial Branch Committee has in its jurisdictional statement reporting to the conference about the judiciary's relationship with the public. And as you have talked about earlier, we don't have an army, we don't have a checkbook, we can't make people necessarily listen to us unless they believe that we're fair and impartial. And one of the issues there is, how do they form that opinion? where do they get their information? If they come to court and they see a court case served on a jury, they know firsthand the valuable work that's being done and how it's being done fairly and impartially. But beyond that, where do they get that information? And we need to jealously guard our status within the community of fairness and impartiality. And in that regard, the branch committee has spent a lot of time on civics education, sharing ideas, because the judiciary needs to tell its story and not rely on outside forces to define us. And so I really believe that those efforts are vital, whether it's tours of school groups, senior citizens doing, extended learning programs, or even something as simple as speaking in the community, not about our cases, but about our Article 3 bench, and make sure the public knows and understands what goes on in this building. Otherwise, it's just a building.
Well put. And again, your leadership here has been outstanding. And why has it been deemed so important to the branch? Maybe now more so than in prior years.
With so many voices out there trying to define the judiciary, we need to jealously guard our fairness and impartiality in the community to continue to have the public's confidence. And with all those different voices, I do believe it is really important that we tell our story as best as we can within the confines, of course, of the code of conduct, and not talking about particular cases, but talking about the process and procedures that allow the judiciary to function so well.
How is students? How do they? I mean, your outreach has not been limited to just students. We were talking about the public in general, and maybe even members of other branches of government that need to hear the judicial voice from time to time. But students in particular, why is it so important, do you think, to focus on them? And we want to talk a little bit about your most recent experiences in that regard.
Well, students are still forming their opinions about the three branches of government, and we still, of the three, have the highest confidence level across the board. And reaching students at a time when they're learning about government, how it functions, and it's vital when they first form those opinions, because most of them obviously won't have come to the courthouse. So reaching them early on is really important.
Agreed. And could you describe for us your recent experience with the Supreme Court in My Hometown program in St. Louis, which, like your Learning Center, was the first of our programs from the Supreme Court Historical Society. You've been leaders in both capacities.
Well, that speaks of the partnership and the quality of the people in the Historical Society and here in the Eastern District of Missouri and the Eighth Circuit. But that program is really important because the Supreme Court can seem like a faraway place, some sort of abstract thing with people that you never ever meet or interact with. The Supreme Court in our hometown, the students here met the participants in the case. They met lawyers who were there. They met witnesses. They talked with them. These were real people who lived in their community that had a dispute, that had to come to our courthouse and have a trial. the witnesses and the judges and the lawyers, they got to see and hear from them firsthand how that trial came together and how it went up on appeal. And it wasn't just a 60-minute argument in the Supreme Court, but how the people in their community found themselves at the Supreme Court, every step of the process, and how real and important it was to them then and to all of us now.
Outstanding. And we know you're very involved in the civic education outreach nationwide. You're going to be hosting a national conference in St. Louis. And by the time this conversation is played to our audience, it may have already have occurred. But could you give us a description of the national conference that you're about to host?
Well, 2019, Judge Robert Katzman and you initiated a national conference, was hosted in New York by the Second Circuit. We have picked up the baton from Judge Katzman on what we now call the Katzman Civic Education Conference, and each circuit court in the country is sending 4 to 6 people, judges and executives and librarians and educators to come to St. Louis to collaborate and share ideas on civic education. As you know, none of us have a monopoly on good ideas, and we can share what we're doing in the different districts, the different circuits, and then that way enhance the programming across the country. Always what works, what didn't work, and how can we make it better?
Well, you've been an outstanding leader throughout your career, and it continues to this day. And we're so very grateful for your time with us today, Judge Sipple, and for your leadership. And we look forward to working with you in this capacity and others going forward. And we applaud your initiatives.
Well, Jim, we want to thank you for your leadership at the AO and in your current position. And you and I both know none of this could happen without great support, whether it's Nicole Matthew or Teresa Lukey or Rachel Marshall or Carol Macedo at the EO. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge their extraordinary efforts.
You're good to do so, and it's typical of you also to give credit where it's due. Thank you, Judge Sipple.
Thank
Teresa,
you,
we're just delighted, Teresa, that you've joined us and joined the judicial branch. You bring a wealth of experience and knowledge and in-person experience in the classroom that you've been able to convert to programs that we've initiated together and programs that you've started on your own. Tell us a little bit about your background and what motivated you to become involved with the Supreme Court of my hometown program.
So for me, it sort of seemed like I had two very disparate career paths, but I got the teaching bug, I think, when I was in law school. I was awarded a Marshall Brennan Fellowship. That program was one part constitutional law seminar, but the bulk of the program, the real meat of it, is that we went into a high school in DC and taught constitutional law specific to students for a year. And I just being in a classroom, being surrounded by the energy and the real interest in how the Supreme Court, just as Judge Sipple said, it feels like it's so far away, but students really began to see how it impacted their lives. And so when I heard about the Hometowns program, it really just felt like I had come full circle and I was back home. So being back, talking about student rights, student constitutional rights, felt like my two careers coming together.
Well, you're a great example of blending the two careers together. And it's been my experience, and I'm curious if you share in this, when you see attorneys and serve as mentors in programs like these, and judges as well, for that matter, um, and the joy they get from it is really different, in some ways better, I think, than some of the experiences they have in their practice of law. Can you describe a little bit that phenomenon in from your own experience, and what you've seen in others and with their participation and programs such as these?
Sure. I mean, students are just really, really inspiring and hopeful. They're our future, right? And so I think that when we see students who are very interested and asking a lot of curious questions and actually putting into practice some of the skills that we use regularly as lawyers, so debating skills, conflict resolution skills, when you actually have tried to teach something like that, and then you see a student doing it, there is really, I don't think anything more magical than that. I think that is the joy of teaching. And so I think for our mentors to see them doing that, for our judges to see them, and certainly for me to see them taking a lesson and putting it into practice is just one of the best feelings.
I share in that experience, and what I've taught in classrooms, it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. So we encourage others out there in the profession, and our judges as well, to get involved. You'll get as much out of it as the students, I think.
Absolutely.
I've learned that you added some things to our the Supreme Court of my hometown's program that were really special in St. Louis. Could you describe that a little bit for us, please?
Sure. So we have had the opportunity to do the hometowns program twice. So we benefited from the reflection from the first round. And as we were discussing how to prepare for the second iteration of it, Rachel and Nicole were reflecting on the fact that it was really hard for the students to distinguish between the difference between a trial court and an appellate court. And they realized toward the end that they had not necessarily gotten that. And so they wanted to really beef up their understanding of what happens at the district court level. And so the lesson that I designed was to give them snippets of evidence that was actually presented in the case. I recruited some people to record transcripts, the testimony from the case, just in small amounts, and to give students an opportunity to really thoroughly review the evidence that they were given. They were key pieces of evidence that were cited by the Supreme Court eventually. So they were the things that the courts were looking at from the initial case. And the students looked at that, and then they developed a closing argument. It was a mock closing argument that they presented to Chief Judge Clark. And so that was really a way to get them to understand how important it was to really explore the evidence that comes from the trial court, and why that matters at the trial court level as they proceeded through the case.
That was an outstanding addition to the program, and the feedback from that was similarly outstanding. It was one of the strongest positive experiences I think we've seen the students have. So we thank you for that insight and leadership in that regard. How did you go about selecting the students who participated in the program?
So all of our students went through an application process. They answered a few basic questions about how they knew about the program and why they were interested in the program. But they also had to submit a letter of recommendation from a teacher or an advisor. And we really relied heavily on the picture that was created by that letter of recommendation. I think in the first round, we learned that it's really important to have a diverse group of skills and students coming to the table, because this program is inherently collaborative. From the every activity that they do, they're doing in groups, and then all the way through the moot court activity that they do as a group, and then their capstone project, all of it, they have to be able to work in groups, and it sort of relies on different skill sets being at the table. And so we were sort of looking for different personalities and different skills. I would say that there was not one particular type of student we were looking for. And we lucked out. I think in both rounds, we got some of the most talented, curious people I've ever met. And I'm in awe of them.
They were impressive. And how about the mentors? How did you go about recruiting them and selecting them? And what was the feedback you got from them after their experiences?
Yeah. So our mentors came from our local legal community. It was basically just a call for volunteers, but we had all kinds of different mentors who showed up to help our students. So we had mentors who are law clerks to our district court judges. We had uh, uh, attorneys from the United States Attorney's Office and from the Federal Public Defender's Office. We had a corporate counsel. We had attorneys from private law firms. We had our city councilor join us to be a mentor. And I think, again, the diversity of experience really, really supported our students and led to really great things. Some of our mentors essentially said that our students were so amazing they could have done it without them, but I don't think that's true at all. I think that our mentors were just so skilled at what they were doing that they really brought out the great potential of our students. They were pretty essential to the program, and I think they all felt that sort of joy that you get from teaching and working closely with students too.
I agree. I think the feedback we received from them after the program was just as encouraging as that which we received from the students. So everyone walked away benefiting from it. We hope the society and the community did ultimately as well. What did the students produce at the end of the program in St. Louis?
So at the end of the first program, their capstone project was an exhibit that's now hanging in our Judicial Learning Center. So there were 5 panels that were created. They were fully researched by the students and designed by the students. And the panels track the progression of the case. So they have the first panel talks about the context that led up to the factual situation. The second panel talks about the district court and what the ruling was in that case. And then the third panel has to do with the Eighth Circuit case and how the Eighth Circuit found in favor of the students. The fourth panel is what happened at the Supreme Court. And then the fifth panel really is about the impact of the case on student press rights today.
It's great.
Oh, and then for our second capstone project, and Judge Sipple alluded to this, but our students had an opportunity to do oral histories. And so they interviewed the 3 plaintiffs in the case, the 3 students. They also had a chance to interview the principal who removed the articles from the newspaper. They interviewed the teacher, the journalism teacher who left right before the incident happened. And then they interviewed the law clerk who clerked for District Judge Nagel at the time of the case. And they interviewed our Eighth Circuit clerk who was deputy chief at the time of the case. And then they interviewed a local attorney who wrote the brief for the Supreme Court. And so they got to meet all of these different people who were directly connected with the case.
What a wonderful educational opportunity for them, and very wise of you to bring all of those into the picture for their learning experiences. Have you done similar programs at the courthouse in St. Louis, similar to the Supreme Court, my hometown program?
I would say that we do it on a small level. As Judge Sipple said, we have student groups who come in regularly. We've had an opportunity with some of those groups to have a little bit more of an immersive experience in their day trip. So we've had students who come and have done a mock mediation to practice conflict resolution skills. We've had students do a mock evidentiary hearing and a mock a moot court and some mock trial types of things, but we have definitely not done anything that is as extensive and as immersive as Supreme Court in my hometown here. But hopefully someday we'll get there.
Well, we hope to continue to work with you on programs such as these. So thank you again for all you've done and the contributions you've made to it to improve it were really very remarkable. I want to ask both of you your sense of whether these programs are making a difference, and if you have any anecdotal examples to share with us for encouragement to others. You certainly have been, as I've said throughout, leaders in this regard. And are you encouraged by the work, and are you motivated to continue it?
Well, Jim, you and Teresa have both alluded to it, but it's what I call light bulb moments. When you see a student who's kind of just here absorbing, processing, and then you see they really get it. And you probably change the arc of their whole educational experience when they understand where they are on the spectrum and what's just happened. That's extraordinary. My other observation is the lawyers who are mentors. Lawyers tend to get wrapped up in their cases. How do I win? How do I take care of my client? As judges, we have the privilege of worrying about the Constitution, worrying about the rule of law. Lawyers on a daily basis don't. They're part of a business operation or a criminal justice approach. And I think that they get as much out of it as students because they get to step back and in their practice of law appreciate again what the purpose of the rule of law is and operates in our society. So it's a refresher, if you will, for the mentors. And I think they have their own light bulb moments when it's over and reinvigorates their practice.
Well,
Yeah,
well put.
I
Please.
absolutely agree. I think if it's okay, may I share a couple of stories?
Please do.
They actually they both come from the same event, our moot court lesson, I'll say, which happened, I believe, in October. That district court hearing where they did mock closing arguments happened in July. So we're talking a span of several months. At that hearing, they were doing a moot of the Supreme Court. So the students had won at the Eighth Circuit level. So that meant that the administration got to make the first argument, and they made their argument, and then the students' attorney stood up and made an argument refuting what the school said about the principal's knowledge and his ability to identify the students. And so they finished their argument, and of course, rebuttal came, and the administration did a pretty solid job of saying no. He was very clear on who the students were, and he could name them. And in this model, everybody gets a rebuttal. I know that's a little bit different, but with our students, both sides do get rebuttal time. And the most amazing thing I've ever seen, I think, in oral argument is that the student's attorney stood up and had the trial transcript that she had used on the second day during her her mock closing. And she said, it says right here that he could not identify the students. And it was just really, I mean, it gave me chills. I wanted to cheer right there. But then the second thing that I witnessed during that moot court is that one of the students who was serving as justice on the court, he walked in, I think, not at all sure which way he wanted to decide this case. And the questions that he posed to both sides were really thoughtful, really curious, and really he just wanted to get down to the bottom line, basically. And so he was very respectful. And it was also just a really incredible experience because for me, what both of them were showing was that they were listening. They weren't just sort of speaking what their talking points were and trying to advance what their agenda was. Both of them were listening to the other side and just being really thoughtful as they processed the information that was coming in. And the moot court was my favorite event of the program.
Well, it sounds uplifting and an educational experience for all involved.
Judge Collier, it's great to be with you again today, and you have taken a very active role personally in educating the public about the importance of civics and civility. I wish you would please describe some of your initiatives and your publications, which I enjoy reading on a monthly basis.
Thank you, Jim. I could talk about this all day, but I know we don't have that much time, so I'm just going to discuss a few of them. The first thing I'd like to talk about is our civics committee. My experience has taught me that many districts have tremendous civics programs. Those programs are the idea of one judge who has a strong interest in civics, and he makes the civics the civics effort run in that district. But when he or she gets involved in a lengthy trial, or they get worn out, or they get elevated to higher court, or they pass on, that civics effort dies. So I wanted to make sure that our civics efforts continue and was not dependent upon just one judge. So we established a civics committee. I chair the committee, but we have other district judges on the committee. We have bankruptcy judges, magistrate judges, law clerks, private attorneys, court staff, IT representatives, and deputy clerks on our committee. The private attorneys come from the Federal Bar Association local chapter and also from IBOTA. IBOTA has a very well-established program, and they lend an awful lot of strength to any civics committee anywhere in the country. They are a nationwide organization, and I would strongly urge any district interested in doing a civics program to at least touch base with IBOTA. The crown jewel of our program is our teachers' law school. And we rotate our teachers' law schools throughout the district. We have 3 divisions, and every year we have a teachers' law school in one of these divisions. We bring in about 30 teachers, mostly from our local community, but also some from outside. And the last one we had in Chattanooga, we actually had a teacher from outside of Atlanta who came all the way up to Chattanooga to participate in our teachers' law school. We have 2 primary goals in our teachers' law school. The first is to impress upon them the importance of the courts, especially the federal courts in our society and in our form of democracy. And we want to inspire them to become active supporters of the courts in their schools and also in their communities. During their teachers' law school, they get a chance to see an actual court hearing. So they get a chance to see a judge sitting on the bench interacting with the litigants, with the parties. And then after that hearing, they get a chance to ask questions of the judge who presided over the hearing. And they get better insight in what it means to be a judge and what a judge actually does in real life. We also give them a hands-on experience with some of the abundant civic materials that are available. For example, iCivics. So we make sure they get a chance to actually access it, use it, and see how they can discuss how they can use it in their classrooms. It's one thing to tell someone about a program. It's another thing to have them actually touch it with their hands and learn how they can use it and talk to other teachers about how it may be useful. So they walk away from our teachers' law school with a very heightened understanding of the importance of the federal courts in our society, and they become ambassadors for us. They pass that passion on to their family, their colleagues, and their students this year, next year, the year after that, and on and on and on and on. So we get more bang for the buck out of our teachers' law schools than any other activity that we do. In our last teachers' law school that we did in our Greenville division, one of the participants, a school principal, went back to her school system afterwards and convinced the school system that instead of just giving a half-hour credit or 1/2 credit for their civics, they should increase that to 1 hour. And they did. She was so impressed by what she learned and what she experienced that she did not think that what the school system was doing really was worth the effort. So that's an example of the impact that a teacher law school can make. Another important endeavor that we've done is a standalone civics website. Our website is very easy to locate. You don't have to go through the standard district court website and do all these menus to locate it. It's the only thing that's on the website. It's just civics. It's not buried amidst other court materials, and it's also current. We make sure it's current. The advantage of the civics website is it's there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not accessible only during working hours. It's not only accessible to particular people, it is there available anytime. So someone in Alaska is working on a project who wants to learn about civics, they can access our website and they can learn information about civics. Not only do we have local information on it, we also have national information on it. We have our civics and other tools on it, and also current events. Our newest initiative is our Civics Bowl. One of the complaints you get about civics for school students is it is dull and boring. And we want to make civics fun. So we patterned the Civics Bowl off of some of the TV game shows where we break the kids down into groups or teams and they compete against one another answering questions. We have about 120, 150 questions about civics, basic things, and they line up against each other. And the first one who pushes the buzzer can answer the question. They get credit for the correct answer. And the kids are extremely enthusiastic about this. They clap their hands, they cheer each other on. They're disappointed they get the wrong answer. And it's not so important who wins. What's important is they spend the time before the bowl studying and learning about our history and learning about important events and important figures in our history. You mentioned some of the letters that you receive once a month. For the past 4 years, I've been authoring a letter to the editor. And our target audience there is adults. Obviously, with civics education, our children are an important audience, but our adults went through a school system where they were not exposed to civics, and we're reaping the results of that now. So a lot of the adults who vote or who don't vote really have not received a well grounding in civics education. So our letters to the editor targets, for the most part, adults. And each month, we pick out some aspect of the judiciary's role and function to talk about. It may be why do we have life tenure for judges? It may be the role of the law in society. It may be the rule of law, but some aspect of the role and function of the courts we will discuss in a letter. The letters are fairly short, they're easy to read, they're written for lay people, they're not written for lawyers, they're not written for law professors. They are designed to be easily read and easily comprehended. And they've received a much wider circulation than I initially intended. I thought that the Chattanooga area would be the target audience that we would be conversing with, but to my surprise, now they go across the country to other judges, community leaders, thought leaders in various parts of the country. And I'm proud to say that Jim is one of the recipients of them. And I'm happy to see that he expressed some enjoyment of them. And I think many people discuss them with their colleagues when they do receive them. My initial idea was that other judges would see what I'm doing, and then they would do the same thing in their own communities. People here in Chattanooga know me. I've got something of a reputation here, but I don't have much of a reputation in Grand Rapids, Michigan, for example, or Salt Lake City. And I was hoping that judges in those communities and other communities would also do the same thing, because they would have a lot more credibility in their own communities than I would coming from Chattanooga. But we've been doing that for 4 years now. We're very proud. We get a lot of very positive feedback from them. Another thing that we do that's very, very touching is on the anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution. We have a public constitutional reading on the steps of the courthouse, and we have people who volunteer and sign up to read about a minute to minute and a half segment of the Constitution. We've had people pass around the street, stop, observe what's going on, and they will take a turn. They'll get in line, they'll come in, they'll read it themselves. One year we had a gentleman dressed up in colonial garb. He had on the tricorner hat, had on the tunic and whatnot, and he got up and read. Law firms are involved in it. Some law firms set up tables on the outside of the lawn so that they can do it. And I did not realize this until I first saw it, but hearing the Constitution read has an impact on you that you cannot imagine. It's not like reading it yourself. It's not like even orally reading it yourself, but just observing it being read touches you in a way that you cannot imagine. The last thing that I would touch upon, because I've gone on longer than I planned to, is we also have a Constitution Day event in our courtroom where we bring in schools, generally 3 schools, and we teach them about the Constitution. We give them a chance to participate. And also they do a skit. I wrote a skit some years ago that highlights some important parts of the Constitution and why the Constitution was adopted. And that's always a highlight of the kids. So there are other things I could talk about. As I said, I could talk about what we're doing all day long, but we don't have enough time for that. So let's leave it at that.
You're prolific. It's amazing, the outreach and the energy and the initiatives you've undertaken, and greatly admired. The only thing I would disagree with is I think you're getting to be very well known across the country. You're not just having an impact in Chattanooga, but the work you're doing is getting recognized all over and within the judiciary around the country, and we're grateful. How have you utilized public space in your courthouse in Chattanooga to promote civic education? You mentioned and community involvement. You mentioned both of those aspects of some of the work you've been doing, but how have you utilized the courthouse itself?
I've come to believe that the best way to make a lasting impact on the public is for people to see our courthouses and observe an actual court proceeding. They get more knowledge and they develop a much better impression by actually being in our courtrooms and our courthouses and seeing an actual court hearing. There's something majestic about our courtrooms. Being in a courtroom means you're not in Walmart, you're not in some other business. You're actually in something that is special. The high ceilings, the walls, the bench, all gives the public an understanding this is a special place, and something special goes on when we're here. We cannot duplicate that in schoolrooms. We can only do that in our courtrooms. So it's important to have the public come to our courtrooms as much as possible. So obviously we have courthouse tours and visits, both from school kids, also from community organizations, senior citizens, and others come to the courthouse, and we will give them a tour of the rooms, courtrooms, and also some of the history. Some of the major trials have taken place, some other events that have taken place in the courtrooms that they're in. Now, here in Chattanooga, perhaps the most famous trial of all was the Jimmy Hoffa trial. That was tried in the courtroom here, and people are always taken aback by that. And we talk about some of the events that took place in that trial, the jurors, and where they sat. Another event that we have in our courtroom is Justice for All. This was started by one of our bankruptcy judges in our Knoxville division, and we bring in students from 3 or 4 schools, and they have a chance to observe a real live court proceeding. They also have a chance to interact with judges and other leadership and the judiciary, and they have a chance to ask questions and talk about careers. And then we have a session where about 4 or 5 judges, both state judges and federal judges, will talk about their careers and how they came from the bench. Many people assume that federal judges were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they encountered no difficulties in their life. And when they hear about the struggles and the obstacles that many federal judges have overcome, they're surprised. But it lets them know that regardless of where you start from, if you set your mind to it and you have some talent and you persevere, there's no telling what you can achieve if you want to. We also have a civics essay contest yearly, and we have the winners presented in our courtrooms. So the winners and their teachers and their parents will come in. We have a program that's relatively short. Then there's a reception afterwards to point out the importance of having people visit the courtrooms. A few years ago, the parents of one of the winners, they were both school teachers, and they were surprised that courtrooms were open to the public. Anyone at any time could come and visit a courtroom. So they gave us an opportunity to talk to them about it and just impressed upon us that so much of the public is ignorant of our court system and how open it is to the public. We also have our naturalization ceremonies that take place in our courtrooms. And following the ceremonies, there are receptions sponsored by local patriotic organizations. And we also use our courtrooms for mock trials. The local Bar Association sponsors mock trials every year, and the finals are conducted in our courtrooms, and we'll generally have some type of ceremony for the winners in our courtrooms. So we don't do as much as we would like to in terms of interacting with the public, but our courtrooms are used pretty well. Our courthouses are used pretty well in interacting with the public.
Thank you. That's really impressive. How did you become so actively involved in illuminating the history of the Ed Johnson case, which also, and I think is also becoming, thanks to you, a much more studied and well-known case. You mentioned the Jimmy Hoffa case in Chattanooga, but this is one that had enormous impact as well.
Jim, it was purely accidental. I was doing some research on the first Black lawyer in Chattanooga. And as I was doing that research, I discovered he was involved in two of the most incredible cases that ever came before the United States Supreme Court. The Ed Johnson case, and the style of the case was Johnson versus Tennessee, and the following case, United States versus Shipp. The Johnson case involved a young Black man tried for rape here in Chattanooga in our state court system, and a trial that was extremely unfair and unconstitutional. This trial took place at the beginning of the last century, and there were two Black lawyers, S.L. Hutchins and Noah Pardon, that became involved after the conviction and after he was sentenced to death. And they did something that had never been successfully attempted before. They sought the intervention of the federal courts. At that time, the federal courts had never intervened in a state criminal trial before. And they were successful, to everyone's surprise. They had an audience with Justice Holland. Justice Holland granted the request for a stay of execution. While the stay of execution was in place, Johnson was lynched by a mob in Chattanooga. He was taken out of the county jail and taken to the local bridge. He was lynched there. The Supreme Court was outraged at this because there was an order that placed Johnson in the custody of the local sheriff, and the local sheriff withdrew all of the guards from the jail except one elderly guard, and the mob broke in, took Johnson out, and lynched him. So the Supreme Court, in response to lynching, for the first and only time in its history, held a trial. So the Supreme Court sat as a trial judge and jury and convicted the sheriff and others involved in the lynching. And this case presents in a graphic and gripping way the crucial value that an independent judiciary provides in our system of law, especially in face of public sentiment and outrage. The local population was outraged at the Supreme Court's involvement. They were crying for Johnson's punishment, either legally or the extra legal means, and the federal courts stood up to that. And the federal courts adhered to the rule of law, and it's one of the sterling examples of how the judiciary should function in our society.
Well, thank you for illuminating the history of that important case and the Supreme Court's role in it. Quite unique, as you point out, sitting as a trial court to convict the sheriff who oversaw the operations and allowed for the atrocity to take place. It set a great precedent, I think, for the court to intervene and signal to the rest of the country that maybe it was the beginning of no tolerance for this sort of activity. Our panel discussion of the Ed Johnson case and the biography of John Marshall Harlan, you and I sat on a panel together, led to our coordination of a hometowns program in Chattanooga with you. What was your experience like with the Supreme Court of My Hometowns program?
Tremendous. There's no other word to describe it but tremendous. It is one of the highlights of my very long judicial career. The impact on the students was moving. These were high school students, and one of the critiques of our high school students today is that they don't read anymore. They use their cell phones and social media, and their attention span is very, very short. I was amazed that during breaks, they were reading books, long books. Their interaction during the entire 2 weeks was tremendous. They asked questions, they made comments, they answered questions well, and they let me know that they were getting it. They're better equipped to be good, informed citizens today. They will be able to live up to what Jefferson wanted from our citizens, to be informed. And working with Nicole was just absolutely marvelous. She was a jewel to work with.
Thank you so much, Judge Collier. From your perspective, why do you think it was important to bring students to the courthouse to learn about the branch? You've touched on this earlier, but in particular, students.
The students of today are going to be our jurors, our leaders, our elected officials, our appointed officials, our lawyers, and even judges of tomorrow. They're going to be making decisions, either directly or indirectly, about our society and its functioning. Giving them a sound grounding now and understand the role and function of the federal courts will better equip them for their responsibilities as adult citizens in our society. Our courtrooms are special. They're majestic and bring home the majesty of the law. Bringing these students into the courthouse is important because if we just go to their schools, we're just one more adult talking to them. But if they come in our courtrooms and see what we do as judges and what the judiciary does as it functions in real life, it can make an impression that lasts a lifetime.
Thank you so much. And did you receive feedback from the students who participated and from the mentors and the judges such as yourself who participated?
Tremendous feedback. To my surprise, at the end of the programs, at the end of the second week, when we were concluded, I expected we'd go rushing for the doors to get back home and get to their video games or their dates or whatever else they had in their lives. But they did not want to leave. They stayed around. They asked me questions. They talked to me. I finally had to excuse myself to leave because it was taking so much time. And when we had the public display of their work, most of them came back and they brought their families and teachers with them. The parents were proud. And not only were they proud, but they knew what the children had done. One of the parents said that every day his daughter would come home and recount to him what had taken place that day. And he kept waiting the next day to see what he learned because he got caught up in the story also. So not only were we capturing the attention of the kids, we're also capturing the attention of the parents. I don't know this, but I expect that they had the same impact on their friends.
That's wonderful. Just really encouraging to hear. Are you considering any other programs?
On the plate right now is a civics summit. I talked about the district civics committee. We also have a circuit civics committee, which I have the honor of co-chairing there. And we're trying to encourage all the districts in the Sixth Circuit to adopt a civics program. And the civics summit is an effort to do that, and also for those districts that do have civics program to enhance their programs, and also to exchange ideas, so that one district that may have a great program can share ideas of the program, their ideas of good programs with other districts, and by that way, the circuit will enhance its overall civics efforts.
Nicole, we're just so grateful for your time and your energy and efforts that you've brought to these programs. If you could describe also for us your background and your motivations to become involved with the Supreme Court Historical Society and what attracted you to the possibility of building the Hometowns program here at the Society.
Absolutely. So I was, as you said, I was a public school teacher for Baltimore County Public Schools for about 10 years. I taught middle school and I taught high school. And then I also, for a year and a half, was a curriculum developer and mentor for new teachers and I really enjoyed that aspect of my job. But while I was teaching high school, I had thought that I would not enjoy teaching government because government in Baltimore County was a class for 9th grade. And having taught 6th grade in middle school and being used to kind of the younger group in a larger school, I was like, I don't know that I want to do that again. I started at my school, I was with juniors and seniors, and it was wonderful. And my wonderful department chair was like, I think you're really going to like this. And so I love teaching government. It's not the same story as US history, but you get to share kind of the context of what's happening within the development of our government and the reasoning behind how our system works as it does. And you inspire students through teaching them about the government to become more actively involved. And so I really enjoyed teaching government. After my first year, I continued to teach it until I transitioned to that resource teacher role. And then I was able to help other teachers learn how to teach government. And so it was really rewarding. And when I found out about the opportunity with the society, number one, I could not believe that such a job existed. I almost didn't apply. I was very intimidated by the role. And a friend of mine was like, just apply. Like, you know, you're a great teacher. And she was very encouraging. So I applied. The interview went very well, which I'm grateful for. And I cannot believe that I get to do this job. I feel like I say to you at least once or twice a year, like, I can't believe this job exists and that I get to be the one to do it. And so I think what intrigued me most was I didn't even know how true Judge Collier's words were. When you bring students into federal courthouses, when you expose them to what truly happens inside, when judges become community members, when lawyers become community members and not these kind of scary individuals maybe you read about in the news who are like sentencing people all the time, right? When you provide that like layer of judicial literacy to our young people, it's transformative. And so before I even understood that, the idea of contributing to the civic knowledge that so many people lack in our country was just so exciting to me. I love working with young people. Teaching the judicial branch was one of my favorites when I taught government, but there was, of course, never enough time. You're just kind of zooming through, hoping to hit as much as you possibly can and that as much of it sticks as possible. And so this idea of a deep dive into local history, which I think is also incredibly meaningful, because now it's not something that happened, you know, across the country or in a different state. It's like it happened around me. Like I used to love going on field trips, both as a student and a teacher, to local places because they were so meaningful. And so all of that coming together created this really exciting opportunity to create these wonderful pockets of educated, or I should say increasingly educated, young people who understood their role, understood their part in democracy, understood perhaps the trickiest of branches, the judicial branch, and not only understood, but they were excited about it. And so it was really a no-brainer for me. And I've been here since 2022, and I hope to be here for a very long time.
We hope so too. And both you and Judge Collier have touched on an aspect of the outreach that was, I wouldn't say unexpected, but wasn't the initial focus. The students were the focus, but the judges and the mentors and the lawyers and the local professionals who've gotten involved with this program are getting as much out of it as the students. And that's just a wonderful development we're seeing with these programs. And I found that particularly attorneys who are kind of frustrated with the practice of law, getting involved with young people, with students, and teaching them something is really one of the most rewarding experiences they are having in their career. So that's been a huge boost to us.
Absolutely. The word rejuvenating is the word I hear most often from judges, attorneys, even local professors and historians who are maybe used to working with different populations of students. all
Yeah.
of these incredible professionals who we bring together really truly enjoy the experience and the connections they're making. We
Yeah.
had a Court of Appeals judge tell a student to let him know when he finished law school, because there would be a clerkship open for him. So that just goes to tell you the incredible experience both the students and the judges are having, as well as the other professionals that engage in the program.
It's great. Well, when you arrived, this was an idea we had, and how did you go about organizing, getting started, and building it from scratch? I mean, we had a couple examples we could kind of draw from on some programs, but nothing quite as involved as this has become.
I was extremely lucky to work with Rachel Marshall and now Teresa Lukey from the 8th Circuit and Eastern District of Missouri. They're both former educators as well. And so I had my initial ideas as Jim, you and I were meeting with representatives from different courts. Rachel was the one who just jumped in immediately, which I'm forever grateful for. But I really attacked it kind of like a very in-depth lesson plan. And so I knew what our goal was. I knew what some of the pillars of the program would be: the local case, the capstone project to educate the community, the deeper understanding of the judicial system. And at times that's both federal and state, depending upon how the case came up. And so I kind of did like a big, almost like a curricular map, if you will, I'm going to call it, or an outline. And then started filling in the pieces with a lot of insight and help from Rachel, who's been doing civics education in the 8th Circuit for quite some time. And so together, we were able to create kind of the first go around of this example. And then as I've worked with other courts, so for example, Judge Collier's entire chambers, both his term and career law clerks participated in this. Judge Collier himself, so many other judges. And so as other groups and courts have become more involved, I think one of the hallmarks of our program is being willing to work and to modify with each court. And so that has helped to grow and shape the program and refine it as we kind of go through each rendition and each city. And so it's not just my work, but it's the work of the judicial branch as well, and these judges and their staff who are offering insights and suggesting ideas, and we're putting it all together. So it's truly a collaborative experience.
Yeah, it's great. It's the idea. It's watching the idea come to life has been a very rewarding for me personally, but for the society generally, I think is and the country ultimately. That's the goal. So how do you go about selecting the case for the course at each of these locations? You described a little bit about working with the local judges and staff, but and I suppose they have ideas, but how does that evolve?
Yeah, so we have kind of a hard and fast rule. Since we're the Historical Society, we will not do a Supreme Court case with a current sitting justice or that they were involved. So our cutoff is around 1991. And then we also we want to make sure the case is going to be intriguing for the students. And then it has to be local. If it's not the city that it happened in, then it should at least be the state. And so, and this could be, for example, we have a program coming up in the Western District of New York. This is actually going to involve like their local Supreme Court justice rather than the case itself. So there's a number of factors we consider. I will usually approach a court with a selection of cases as a suggestion, but like in the case of Chattanooga, they came to me, they're like, we know what we want to do. And they sold me and they're like, let's do it. And so some courts have several cases, which could be interesting. Some courts really have one unique case. And then there's other tie-ins that we consider. And so again, I probably am going to say this word maybe too much, but it's really a collaborative effort. So where the court is trusting me as an educator with my background working with high school students, and I am trusting them and their thoughts about which cases would be best for students to learn about. So.
And as part of that collaboration, how did you go about selecting the students and the mentors who participate in the programs?
So the students, believe it or not, actually self-apply for the program and get a letter of recommendation. And so we review their applications, their letters of recommendation, and then we offer acceptances and at times a waiting list to make sure that we get as many students as possible to be involved in each program. The mentors are typically the work of the court. And so I will sometimes have like a letter that the court can use or modify that they can share out. But a lot of times, if you have a judge involved, they have some pretty wonderful ideas about who to involve. And it seems attorneys love the idea of being with some of their federal judges in a non-courtroom setting. And so that tends to be appealing as well. I also really enjoy sharing other people's mentors' experiences, which appeal to some of our potential mentors in new cities. And so in the student's case, it's self application and effort on their part, which says a lot about who they are. In the mentor's case, the local court tends to be extremely helpful in recruiting the mentors to work with the students.
That's great. And what did the students, what do you encourage them to do in the way of producing a product at the end of the case? It's not just absorbing the information and material you provide about the case, but there are projects that they get involved with. And what do they produce? And can you give us a flavor of that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most important pieces in education is to take your knowledge and apply it and take an action of some sort, because that really can teach someone else. That really shows that knowledge has been solidified in your brain. You really understand it and you're able to communicate it to another person. And so one of the pieces, and perhaps the most important piece of the Hometowns program, is what we call our capstone project. So far, it's been really special to watch the students create these. They're actually museum quality exhibits inside federal courthouses. And so Judge Collier was talking about how they use public space in their court. They also have a mini museum from the Hometowns program outside, I believe, their main ceremonial courtroom. And so as people are waiting to go to court or waiting for other things in the courthouse, they have the opportunity to learn from these 5 student created panels. And I say that, I think when I described this project to Judge Collier initially, he was a little hesitant. I think he thought we were going to get out like markers and poster paper. He's chuckling. So, but we use this really wonderful program called Canva, and the students go in and they create paneled exhibits that really kind of go with the decor, the qualities of the courthouse. They fit seamlessly in. And so we have exhibits in St. Louis and Chattanooga and in Indianapolis. And then St. Louis added to their exhibit. This was so cool. Thanks to Rachel and Teresa. They added a oral component to their exhibit. So now when you go in, you can actually hear audio, like podcast style recordings of people who were involved in the case. St. Louis has the advantage of having a case from the 80s. So a lot of people are still around and still involved, and they were delighted to be interviewed for the podcast. And so you can read the panels and actually hear what the case participants had to say. So it's pretty cool.
Wonderful. And how did the students and I have mentors as well respond to the program so far?
The response has been unbelievable and overwhelming in the best way possible. I wasn't sure. Like, I know how I was as a student. I know how some of my students were when I taught them. But when you start something brand new, you're not necessarily sure how it's going to land. And did you hit the right mark? And did you take the right approach? And all of these things. There's so many questions. And so when we finished that first program in St. Louis, I was like, we really have something here. The student response has been unbelievable. As some of those students have graduated, we follow each other on social media. So I watch them involved in their college communities, in various political organizations, in registering people to vote, in doing so many things that they attribute to a deeper understanding of the government. As we go back to cities, so when we went back to St. Louis, we had numerous students from the first program volunteer to be student mentors in the second program. And I already have a list of several students from the Chattanooga program who can't wait for the summer of 2026 because they want to come back and be student mentors and help other people go through this program. The mentors have been incredible as well, both the speakers and the mentors who have participated. We have some that have participated multiple times. We have Supreme Court advocates willing to give up their time to Zoom in, to share what it's like to advocate before the Supreme Court. These are people that bill at quite a hefty dollar amount who are just so eager to speak with the students. And then not only that, to do it one time, but to return, to do it again. Anytime you need me, let me know. And so it's just been, it's really special. What we're doing is really special. The students feel it. The mentors feel it, and I couldn't be more proud to have a part in it.
Thank you, Nicole. And what other programs are planned or in the pipeline?
Absolutely. So this year we actually have 8 or 9 programs, if you count the fact that we're doing a couple doubles. So Juliet, our curriculum development manager, is leading the Sacramento program that features ex parte endo, which will be a deep dive into a Japanese American incarceration case and the history surrounding that. I will be in Providence, Rhode Island, leading a rights of the accused case, Rhode Island v. Innis, with Chief Judge McConnell and District Clerk Nora, and just the entire District of Rhode Island is involved in some way in this Hometowns program. It's unbelievable. And then we have two programs in Puerto Rico, thanks to Chief Judge Arias and Magistrate Judge Lopez. We are going to have programs in Montgomery, Alabama, thanks to Chief Judge Marks and the Johnson Institute. In Minnesota, thanks to Judge Fisher and their public information officer, Rebecca Parks. And then Juliet and I will be leading programs in the fall. Juliet will be looking at Chicago, Escobedo v. Illinois, and I will be working with the First Circuit on Smith v. Gogan, which is a First Amendment case. So lots of wonderful things happening. And we have programs scheduled in 26. Like I said, Chattanooga's coming back around. And then also 2027. So our schedule is getting full, but in the best way possible. And we're so excited to continue to add districts and circuits who are interested in having their own Hometowns program.
We're very grateful for all the hard work and the initiatives, and the feedback has been just very positive, overwhelmingly so, and as you say, in a good way. I want to ask both you and Judge Collier if you think these programs are making a difference. And I think you both already alluded to this in your responses during the course of the conversation, but do you have any other anecdotal examples to share for encouragement in the way the programs are unfolding?
Jim, I have two. One of the students in our program was Catherine Michael, and she goes back to school, and she has the initiative and the self-confidence to go to her local school board. And she convinced the school board that they should start a civics program there in the school district. And they did as a result of her initiative and her persuasion. The other example is one of the other students in the program, McKenna Wills, wants to work for us this summer in our chambers. So I've talked with my staff, and we think we're going to offer a chance to work in our chambers, and we will likely have her do some work on our civics efforts.
That's great. Really good development. Thank you, Judge Collier.
Similar to what Judge Collier shared, the Eighth Circuit has had some credible interns based on the Hometowns program. And so one of them, Kean O'Brien, was the first kind of civics intern as a result of the Hometowns program. And then we get requests all the time for internships. So that's something we're exploring. But Civics actually has a Hometowns alumni newsletter now, and students have an opportunity to share with each other, like with the Hometown Student Network, some of the exciting things that they're doing. And so Catherine and McKenna shared their stories, but we had numerous other stories of students who are participating in mock trial and who are getting involved on their college campuses and their local high school campuses. We also had a student participate, Mackenzie, participate in a Civics 101 podcast that talked about the Chattanooga Hometowns program, and just their reflections that we get back at the end of the program are incredibly insightful and very meaningful, and just really show their growth. I think hold on. Chief Judge Clark from the Eastern District of Missouri said it best. When he first met the first batch of Hometown students, they were so shy. And by the end of their program, it was just like they were so comfortable in the courthouse. And so this building and these people that often you maybe see on some of your worst days, if you don't work for the federal court, right, has now become transitioned from that to an immediate and wonderful part of these students' communities. And so it's just it's a transformational process, and it's really wonderful to see.
Thank you both for your time. We know you're both very busy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Nicole.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Judge Collier. I'm hoping to see you again soon. I don't know if you ever get out to DC anymore, but whenever you do, let me know.
Will do. Will do.
And I'll try to get, I love the part of the world you live in. If I can get myself out of Kentucky and get down to Tennessee, I'll come visit.
You really should. Chattanooga is a special place, Jim.
It is.
So,
Very nice.
I think since they can cut this, Judge Collier will be at the Katzman conference.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
So we'll get to see him then.
That's terrific. Very good.
Yeah.
I want to thank you both for your contributions along the way to fulfilling what the Chief Justice has encouraged us all to do within the judicial branch, and that is increase our outreach to the public, increase public knowledge about the importance of the branch's independence, how it functions, how it works. And the more educated and involved and engaged the public is in this regard, the more secure I think we can feel about the future of the judiciary and our form of government. So what you're doing is very important work. We're very grateful. Hope we can be of assistance to you as you continue to work within the branch and within the public, your community. And thank you so much for participating in this program with us today. We hope that it reaches additional people and inspires others to get involved similarly.